Hey guys, it's Summer, and today I'm going to tell you all of the books that I've read in the past 4 months. I have Markle here with me today. He's taking a nap. I haven't read very many books so far this year. I know that I think my yearly reading goal on Goodreads was to read like 35 or 40 books. I think I'm gonna need to like reassess that and lower it. The first book that I read this year was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, or Michaelides. Everybody says it different. This is a really popular thriller, so I'm sure you've already heard of it, but it's about a criminal psychotherapist who goes to a secure psychiatric unit in North London to go see if he can talk to this woman who killed her husband years ago and hasn't spoken a word since. He wants to see if he can get her to talk. One of the perspectives is the psychotherapist, and one of them is the woman who killed her husband. You're like reading her journal in the days leading up to her killing her husband. I think I would have liked this a lot better if the pacing was done a little bit better. There was nothing really thrilling about this book up until the very end when all the stuff started happening. It just was kind of like boring character study stuff that I didn't really care for. This book had a really cool, different plot twist. It was unlike anything that I've read in a book before. So I thought the plot twist was really cool. Even though I did call it earlier on in the book, I didn't mind it so much because it was executed so well. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and also Max Gladstone. Guys, I thought this was gonna be like my new favorite book. I was so excited to read this. If I had ever made a 5-star prediction video, this would have been in that video. I was so excited to read it. It was a sci-fi short story told through letters. Like, I was all about it. It's also enemies to lovers. Like, I was so excited to read this book. I picked up the audiobook and just like, it wasn't working for me. It wasn't making sense. So I actually almost halfway through the book started over and tried to re-listen to it to make sure that I was giving it a proper shot at being one of my favorites. But I honestly was just like so confused during this whole book. The story follows 2 time travel agents that are from like enemy agencies. They're both trying to make a certain future happen. One of them is a more nature focused future and one of them is a more like technology focused future. So we're following these 2 enemy time travel agents that kind of run into each other through time, and they're trying to sabotage each other's work. And in that process, they start leaving notes to taunt each other for the other one to find, and the notes slowly start going from taunting to romantic. Because they're time travel agents and they don't want their agencies knowing that they're leaving notes for each other, they do them discreetly and kind of hide them into the surrounding setting. So like, there's one note that's left in the rings of a tree stump, and they talk about how it took years to write, but since they're time travel people, they can do that. But it was just really cool, like the creativity that went into this book. It was very unique. I honestly just wish that I liked it more. I really didn't like the ending. I just felt really confused. So I don't know. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. I'm so sad that I didn't like this more. The next book that I read was actually a buddy read that I did with Kayla from Bookstacked Blonde on Instagram. We read Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Negan. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right, but we both really liked this. I gave it 5 stars. It was just so nice to be able to talk to somebody while we were reading it, and it was just honestly a super fun time reading this with Kayla. So we definitely need to do more buddy reads in the future. This is an Asian-inspired high fantasy story about a world where there are different castes of people. There's paper caste, which are fully human, and they're kind of like the lowest ranked in society. There's steel caste, which are humans with animalistic features, or demon features is what they call them, the more animal-like people. So you could be like mostly human and just like have cat ears or something. And then moon caste is fully demon or fully animal form, where you're like sort of humanoid looking, but you have more animal features than human. That was really hard for me to visualize for some reason. I kept visualizing Kung Fu Panda characters, and I don't know why. The kingdom that this book is set in is ruled by an evil demon king who every year selects a group of paper girls to come live at the palace and be his concubines. Some of the girls and their families think it's a high honor for these girls to be taken. Some willingly volunteer for it, and then some are taken against their will, and that's what happened to the main character. There's a lot of stuff in this book with violence and sexual assault that was really hard to read, but the writing was beautiful. The romance is one of my favorite romances that I've read in a really long time. The main character ends up falling in love with one of the other paper girls, and it's just like such a beautiful romance. I loved it. I bought the sequel, but I have not read it yet. I don't know why, because I loved this one so much. I like immediately wanted to get my hands on it, and then once I bought it, I just like didn't read it. So I don't know what's wrong with me, but 5 stars. I loved this. My next book you'll recognize if you watched my birthday reading vlog and that is Come Tumbling Down by Shauna McGuire. This is number 5 in the Wayward Children series by her. I really loved this series, but I did not like this book. If you did watch the birthday reading vlog, you'll know that I thought this was going to be a 5-star read for me. It ended up being a 3.5. It definitely wasn't bad, but it just wasn't my favorite as far as the characters that we followed and the adventure that we went on. I'm also finding that I like Shauna McGuire's books that have a new character or new characters in them, and we're following them in their fantastical world before they come to the school for wayward children. That's why In an Absent Dream, I think, is my favorite book out of this whole series so far. This one just had a whole group of characters who we've seen in other books, but they just were not my favorite to follow for some reason. And there were just so many people to follow in such a short amount of pages. And there were also just so many people to keep track of and stay with through such a short book. So I don't know, it just wasn't my favorite. I honestly don't even remember very much of what happened in this book. I just remember that I was kind of let down, so I don't know. I love the cover though. These covers just like are always so good. After that, I read The Whisper Man by Alex North. I listened to it on audio and I gave it 2 stars. I really did not like this book. This is marketed as a thriller mystery, and there's nothing thrilling about it. I posted a little like mini review of this book on my Instagram stories after I read it. Olivia from Liv's Library commented on it and was like, exactly, this is not a thriller, it's a mystery. And I was like, thank you, I'm so glad I'm not alone in this. I think there were like 2 different timelines that we were following, and I just like could not keep any of it straight. I didn't really care about the characters enough to try to keep it all straight, but I just like didn't even know what was happening half the time. I also thought that the ending was really lackluster, and there was no way that I could have come to that end conclusion on my own. At least as far as what I was experiencing while I was reading, there were no clues left to make you guess who the big bad at the end was going to be. And for a mystery book to like lack those things, it wasn't done very well. You should be able to go along with the detective and like pick up on things through the book and then solve the mystery with them. And I just like the mystery was just kind of like dropped and we were expected to just like accept it. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm explaining this right. After reading some books that I just like was not feeling, I wanted to pick up something nice and easy to read, so I picked up Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. Nicole loves this series and was the one who recommended it to me. I honestly love alien romance stuff. I loved the Luck series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. That was one of the first series that I read when I joined BookTube, or even maybe before I joined BookTube. This is definitely romance where you're kind of just reading it for the smut though, so. This story is about a woman who gets abducted by aliens with a group of other women. Something goes wrong with the ship that they're on though, so the aliens have to drop them off at this other planet to come pick them up later. It's an ice planet, and our main character decides that rather than wait for the aliens to come, she's gonna go try to find help. She ends up meeting this blue alien who is going to help her rescue her friends, and on the way back to her friends, they have a lot of sex. This is honestly just such like a guilty pleasure read that I didn't really feel like I wanted to rate it. I just wanted a really fun, easy to read, smutty book. And that's what I got. This next book was also a buddy read, and that was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I read this with Nicole and it was so much fun. I'm finding out that buddy reads are like my favorite. They're so great. This is Sarah J. Maas's new urban fantasy series. I don't think it's marketed as that. I think it's marketed as high fantasy, but it's definitely like a contemporary setting with fantasy elements thrown in. There are like angels and werewolves, but there's also like nail salons and cell phones and stuff, which I honestly had a hard time with at first because I really don't like urban fantasy. There were so many things that I did like about this book though that they kind of overshadowed the urban fantasy stuff that I didn't like. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Immediately after I finished it, I wanted to give it a 3.5, but I kind of just gave it like an extra little bit because I just had such a fun time reading this with Nicole that my memories of the reading experience like make it a 4. This book is about a girl named Bryce who gets hired by the local law enforcement, which are like angels in this story. She gets hired by them to help solve a mystery, to try to find a missing item, and also try to solve the murder of some of her friends. She ends up being teamed up with this guy named Hunt. They have a lot of really fun banter. It's kind of like enemies to lovers, and it has like forced proximity and stuff, which are my favorite tropes. It was just a really fun book to read, and I thought that the ending was really cool. I just really love Sarah J. Maas. I know that a lot of people don't, but I really do. Her books are some of my favorites. Nicole and I both agreed that this is not as good as Throne of Glass or Akamath, but it was just a really fun time. The last book that I'm going to talk about is actually a book that I finished yesterday. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the only book that I read in April, and that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. It was honestly just like the most wholesome, cute thing that I could have read right now. I feel like reading books right now is just like so weird. Social distancing just like has me in a mood that is not the mood to read books. So I feel like for a lot of people this would be the perfect book to read right now. It's just so feel good and so just like cozy. I loved it so much. I love the family dynamic. I love all the sisters. I love their mom. I love Laurie and his grandpa. Oh my gosh, I just like love everybody in this. I love Hannah, like everybody is just like, I love the found family in this book. Like the actual like family and sister dynamic is really fun. I have all brothers, so reading about all sisters was really fun. It's like I love their family, but I also just love the people that are the friends that they've just made a part of their family. If I have to pick absolutely like one character to love the most, it's Laurie. I love him so much. But I think out of the sisters, my favorites were Jo and Amy. I didn't like Amy in the first half of the book, but I liked her a lot more in the second half. I really like art and stuff, so I feel like I kind of connected with her with that because she loves art and painting so much. This book made me absolutely sob. This book made me laugh. I found myself smiling all the time when I was reading this. It just honestly made me so happy. I really loved this book. I read this for the stay home reading rush because it has a house on the cover, and that was one of the challenges. This was a book that I talked about in my books that I need to read this year video. So I have one of those books checked off of my list. I just didn't ever think that I would like a classic this much. I thought that the writing would get in the way of me enjoying it, but the writing was really fun. It was very clever and it didn't feel like too dense or too hard to understand. So I just loved everything about this book. It was so cute. I definitely recommend it. Those are my most recent reads. Little Women was definitely my favorite out of all of them, even though Girls of Paper and Fire was amazing. Little Women is just like one of my new all-time favorite books. Let me know what you guys have been reading, and I will see you guys in the next one.